Hi guys, Carl Hinder, Salon Help Business Coach. Most of you know me by now. Look, it's Friday afternoon, I'm back in the office and I've taken so many phone calls or messages and emails this week on GDPR. I thought, look, Friday afternoon, let's get a video together, let's get some information for you guys and try to help you out a little bit. There's lots of panic in the industry. It's kind of half of you are panicking to death and the other are turning a blind eye. Well look, I wouldn't do either. Don't panic to death. Just go about setting up the GDPR in a methodical fashion. You're going to be alright, and don't do nothing at all because you're going to put yourself in a very difficult situation if something goes wrong. So look, the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations. Okay, they've come in from the EEC and the UK along with the rest of the EEC, and half the world in fact are going to have to comply with it. Now we need to comply with it by the 25th of May 2018. Which doesn't give you guys a lot of time if you haven't done anything at all. But if you haven't done it, work on it now. And if you haven't finished by the 25th of May, that's not the end date, that's the start date. So in the weeks and months running after that, get stuck in, get it ready, get it, right for your business. Now, with all this data protection going on, I don't want you to overlook these things. The PECR, which is the Privacy Electronics Regulations, and the TPS, the Telephone Preference Service, you was always supposed to have been complying with those regulations under the Data Protection Act. Now they kind of come under the whole umbrella, even though these guys exist as well, of GDPR. Okay. Now all of this stuff is going to be monitored, and it's going to be monitored by the ICO. Again, that's always existed. But you never had to register in the past really, it was more voluntary. Now there's certain stipulations. If you're processing a lot of information, you really should be registering with the ICO. Now it's my opinion that if you've got to deal with all of these things and you're quite a busy salon, I would register. Because not only is it good for you in terms of publicity for the public, it's also very good for you to be able to get future information. They are helpful. I have spoken with them. They do really want to kind of get everything in place. They're not really looking at policing and catching you out just yet. They're looking to make sure everyone is complying. And the information that you could be processing that you need to be thinking about will be, clients or customers, staff come under the regulations, and all your third parties as well. So, your software providers, maybe your suppliers, that sort of thing. Okay, so talking about the ICO. Here's the ICO page. You can see the URL at the top bar here, ico.org.uk. You'll see on the front page that they demonstrate the fines that they're imposing on some of the big companies, and that's for the current data breaches. You're concerned at the moment with the right hand side of the page. That's the registration tab, which is here. Hopefully you can see that flashing. If we tab on that, you'll come to the registration page and it gives you a little bit of information. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll come to the quick self-assessment tab, and that'll tell you whether or not you should be registering. Okay, you can start that and it'll ask you a series of questions and finally come up with an answer. Now you already know my opinion that if you're a big salon or a busy salon with a few staff, then it's worth registering regardless of the outcome of that. And then when you are ready, just come to the register now. You need about 15 minutes of time, and you also need £35, depending on the size of your business, but most salons will be covered with £35. Okay, so let's get back to the presentation. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of tips early on in the process. Because there's a lot of paperwork, again, if you're a one-man band, you're still going to have to do all of this, but it's not going to be as difficult if you've got a lot of staff. First of all, have a clear out. You might have seen some of my posts yesterday where I put a picture up of an incinerator. Well, that wasn't a joke. That was real, If you clear out all the data that you don't need, you're never using, and you've got no purpose for it in the future, then you haven't got to file it, you haven't got to process it. So clear out those cupboards if they're paper files and get them burnt or shredded, something proper, because you've got to protect that data. And if they're online files, obviously you've got to delete them properly. So have a good clear out to start with. And secondly, like I said, don't panic. You just got to work through the regulations in a methodical fashion. Now don't worry if you can't see all the stuff on the flip charts, because I'm going to chop this video up a little bit, insert some of my training pages so you can pause the video and read through them. You can always message me on the Salon Help Facebook page, or you can email me, okay, info@salon-help.co.uk, and I'll be able to send you copies of them if that's what you want. So, GDPR. It's got 3 parts. So, part 1. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to do a data investigation. You've got to investigate yourself. You just got to work out everything that you're already doing. So we're looking for the type of data you hold on clients and on staff, ex-staff, suppliers, and any other third-party users. The data source, so that's, where did you get it from in the first place? So you've got to do a written report of all this, write it all down. What the ICO are looking for, if there is a breach in the future or a complaint, they're looking that you've taken reasonable steps to prevent it. And the more you have documented, the more professional you look, and you're more likely to get a slap on the wrist, if you only got a minor breach and you've got everything in place, as opposed to a massive fine. So we're looking at the data source, where you got it from, and then you've got to be thinking about, why do you actually need this data? If you hold on to something, if a customer hasn't been to you for 5 years, then you've got no need to hold on to it. And under GDPR, you've got to have a legal reason for holding on to this data as well. So it's not just that you might think they come back in 10 years' time. That's not going to kind of be good enough with the GDPR regs. So, and you're also going to be thinking about who you share that data with. Okay, so if you're sharing it with maybe your payroll people or your accountant or anything like that, you've got to document all this. So just analyze yourself, sit down for an hour, work all those things out. Okay, let's summarize what we've done so far and maybe touch on a few new things. The regulations apply to both paper records and digitalized records. If you're already paper-based, you don't need to immediately move to digitalization. Although as a coach, I would certainly be saying, I think you should be moving towards that, so you'll be able to find the records easier in the future. You'll be able to access them more easily. You're going to be able to respond to them. And I think that's the way forward, and you should be planning that in. At the moment, there's no need for it. You can stick with your paper records if that suits your business. But either way, digitalized or paper, you fall under these regulations. The second thing is, I am a little concerned that salons think that they are GDPR compliant because they are software. The software that they're using for booking and ordering and loyalty schemes and all that sort of thing. Yes, those software systems may well be GDPR compliant, and all the ones I've seen so far have been. That does not make you a salon GDPR compliant. There's still a lot of other things that you must check. So looking at part 1, which we've already started on, you've got to get together an information audit. You've basically got to assess where your business is, whether it's on paper or whether it's digitalized, or in most cases, a combination of both. Now, this document has got to be a document. It has to be that. It has to be a report. You're analyzing exactly where you are and writing everything down. So you're looking at the type of personal data you hold on clients, staff, and ex-staff. Could be anyone else as well that's in contact with your business. It could be suppliers. It could be any other third party. The source of the information, where did you get it from, and then why you need this information and what you plan to do with it in the future. Who you share it with, or who do you plan to share this information with. And again, like I said, you've got to do this for the staff, ex-staff, clients, and even your suppliers. Now, continuing with part 1, the ICO are looking for accountability. That's really what GDPR is all about. That means that your salon needs a single person in charge of compliance. So bigger businesses will have compliance officers. Usually it will be the salon owner or the director that's going to be responsible for GDPR. Yes, all the staff are going to be responsible. Every director, every employee has their part to play in GDPR, but there must be a point of contact for the ICO, and that has to be some type of compliance officer. Then you need to create yourself a GDPR policy. I've heard it called the Fair Information Policy or a privacy document. I think I've documented mine as a privacy policy, but essentially what you've got to decide for yourself is these things. Why you collect the various data. What are your lawful reasons for collecting it and for using it? Who is collecting this data? How you collect it? How you use it? What is it being used for? What will you use the personal data for what will you not use the personal data for in the future? Who will it be shared with? How will the data affect the person, and could they cause them to complain? How will you record and action people who have opted out? So you're sending people emails, and you gotta make sure that you then don't send them an email the following day with another offer. They've opted out. There's got to be a system in place for that. What rights clients, employees, ex-employees, and job applicants have. You've got to be thinking about the information you're gathering from even people that you're interviewing. Do you really have a right to hold on to that information for 6 or 12 months or 2 years if you're not going to use it, or are you going to use it for incorrect purposes? And then what systems are you using, and what security systems do you have around them, including the security system for your website? And then who in your organization should complain to you before the ICO? So if someone has a complaint, who do they contact? And as I said early on in this summary, that would be your compliance officer. So the GDPR says that all correspondence and documents must be written in plain language and easy to understand. So don't complicate things. Make it easy. Keep things rolling. Keep things simple. Okay, back to the presentation. Now, part 1, I've only put part 1B just to split it down for you, but it's still part 1. You've got to designate someone to manage all this GDPR for you. You can't have everyone in charge of it, okay? So obviously, for most of you out there, you're going to be single owners or partnerships. One of you has got to be in charge of this. Or if you're a big organization, then you've got to have a designated officer who's responsible for GDPR. Now, we're all responsible for it, all the staff, all the workers, all the directors. Everyone's responsible, but you've got to have someone in charge. So they're looking for you to have taken reasonable steps when managing data. That's the kind of key thing. Now, you're going to have to produce your own GDPR policy, your own privacy policy. Okay, I think I've heard other people call it the fair use policy. How you are going to manage GDPR in your business. Now, it can be a lengthy document. I think mine's about 7 pages long, and it took the best part of a day to get it all right for my kind of business. But then mine's probably a bit more complex than the average salon. Now, this is my advice. I would use some software to do 2 parts of GDPR. The first part that I would use is a GDPR tracker. I've just switched to using this GDPR tracker. I don't work with these guys, I'm not affiliated with them, okay? But I found that this is the best way for me. And what it does, it takes you through step by step by step exactly how to manage GDPR, not now but in the future, but it also keeps a record of everything you're doing. So you don't want to manage GDPR on a piece of paper or the odd Word document and then be scrabbling around from, when you get a request from a member of the public or a request from the ICO. So I'm going to put the link for this and maybe an email address as well. You can slow the video down or pause it, or you can jump on my site. There's probably a link on there as well. The GDPR tracker I've found to be excellent so far. Here's the GDPR tracker that we were talking about in the presentation. So this is the opening page and it says, welcome to GDPR tracker. The first 3 things that you need to look at is the introduction, the GDPR data protection principles, and the glossary of terms. The glossary of terms is absolutely fantastic. We're all new to the GDPR concept, and understanding what everything means is really the first step to actually making it easy to understand and easy to comply with. So once you've been through the introduction, the data principles, and then the glossary of terms, at the bottom of the page, you could just click on to next and it starts. And it starts with your business profile, and you'll put in, this is one of my businesses, you put in your business name and your registered address, and then your emails and your name and so on. And then it takes you to personal and sensitive data, asks you about, is your business processing personal data? In which case, yes, in my business. Then we put in the client's name, the client's address, and all the things that we are going to gather. And it takes you through that page by page by page by page, right down through staff awareness and training. This is the middle column here that I'm talking about. Lawful data processing. It takes you through all of the things here. Please check all the processing activities that apply to your sales and marketing department. Okay, so I deal with social media, customer support, newsletters, email marketing, and so on. And as I'm going through it, it's checking that I've got the right documentation for compliance for my particular business. Now, the great thing with this is you can do a little bit of work on this every day, half an hour or an hour, instead of a full few days on the trot. You can put it down and it'll store all the information for you and you can come back to it. But it also allows you to store information for next year as your business changes. Now, it's going to ask you for information as you're going along. And where you don't have a document ready, it gives you suggestions or a facility to be able to use one of their documents. So this one is for the GDPR data mapping, which we've already talked about in the presentation. And this is just a spreadsheet sample of what they offer you. Then you can choose to use this document and store it on the system. And so, as you can see on the left-hand side of you've got to consider things like your payroll, who's dealing with your pension, your PAYE, the banking, who's getting the information, what security system you've got in place. Now, that sounds a bit scary, but when you've got a system like this, you can ask the questions. With this system, there is a helpline or a chat box that you can use as well to keep you up to date. As you can see, look, there's a chat box down here, and you can have a conversation about your particular business. I have actually used them already and found them to be very, very useful. So you continue, you go through them all on the middle one, and eventually you'll complete it. It does have a lot more information if you want. There's reports. It gives you a downloaded PDF report of exactly where you are at any time, or if you want to prove that you are compliant, you can use this. Okay, so that's all for now. Let's get back to the presentation. Continue. So, like I said, it'll keep you organised and it'll take you beyond the 25th of May as well. So you're never going to forget to do something because there's always going to be an open record there. Now, this is the one thing that's really got me irritated, frustrated over the last week in particular. Not so much the phone calls, but some of the forums, but phone calls as well. Look, just because you've got an online booking system, it does not mean that you are GDPR compliant. I see everyone saying, oh, I've got a certain brand of software and therefore I'm all okay. Well, I'm glad that the software is now GDPR compliant, and that's probably the biggest part of what you've got to do. But it's not good enough for compliance for GDPR per se. If someone phones up, and your receptionist writes down their telephone number, she can't just stick it on a post-it note anymore and leave it on the desk for you to come in on Monday for you to call her back. You've got to have systems for everything you do. So the software is just a part of what you're doing. If you're keeping lots of staff records on paper, if you're keeping contracts, if you're keeping appraisal forms, your software, your booking online software isn't going to cover it. It probably isn't going to cover it at least. Okay, if you're sending stuff to your accountant, maybe payroll to your accountant or the payroll accountants, then you're going to have to make sure A, they are compliant as well, but that you are passing it to them in a certain way. So software, just for booking, isn't going to make sure that you are GDPR compliant, okay? People are just hiding behind it. They're going, yeah, the software is done, Carl, but that's only half the job, okay? Booking online, great. Even consultation forms I've seen online, great. Loyalty schemes, usually online, great. If they're all under the same software, guys, you're probably going to be covered as fab. But there's things happening in your salon every day. You're taking names, you're taking addresses, you're taking date of birth, you're taking sensitive information, you're doing skin tests, whatever it is you're doing. If that hits a bit of paper or it's hitting a file in your system, you've got to do everything you can to protect it, and it's not down to your software company to do everything for you. Okay, so I've already said, if you're passing stuff on to another company, by the way, it's up to you to make sure that they're both GDPR compliant, you and them. If there was a big breach in the future, you'd be joint responsible. Okay? So I had to put this in here. I was going through this over the last couple of hours, and I thought, I've been working on this GDPR solidly with clients and God knows what for the last month or so, and I've phoned lots and lots of people. And then when I got to this, I thought, I've got to share this. The GDPR says that all your documentation must be written in plain and simple language and easy to understand. So when you send out a newsletter and you're asking them to opt in, which I'll cover in a moment, it's got to be plain, it's got to be simple. Everything you do for the public has got to be plain and simple. And I thought, wow, isn't that ironic that the regulations themselves are anything but plain and simple. It's so complicated for particularly small business to actually get this in a good order and sensibly done. Anyway, nothing to do with the training, I just thought it was quite funny. Okay, so part one continues. It's data collection. So the key points when you're collecting data, so when we say data, things that you're going to use for emails, newsletters, that sort of stuff. And like I said, they've got to clearly say that they're from you. Not just your name, they've got to say that they're from your business. Joe Blogs Spa or Joe Blogs Barbers or hair salons. You've got to say about your business location, situated, or the address here. You've got to say what the business name is. And you've got to give contact details, the address, the telephone number, email, whatever. You've got to provide that information, which I think most of us would anyway, because we are trying to get customers to contact us when we send out a newsletter or an email, so we've got to let them know. But it's just one of those things, we've got to make sure everything is clear. Now, on all this documentation, when you send out a newsletter, when you send out an email, anything like that, this is a big part of GDPR. The big part is the opt-in. Now, we used to see lots and lots of forms where if you didn't tick the box, or cross the box or whatever, you were automatically opted in, so you had to opt out. Now you've got to opt in. You've got to have a process where clients have either got to sign to say yes, you can use my information, and you've got to be clear about what you're going to use it for as well. So I would like to keep your name and address and date of birth, and I'm going to use it for newsletters, emails, loyalty schemes, whatever it is, and they've got to tick each box to say yes, I want you to do that. Okay. So they've got to take action to actually opt in. I know I'm kind of overemphasizing this, but this is one of the key things that you're going to kind of easily get monitored on and easily pulled up on. So they can't register by default. And now, your existing clients, don't all panic. I've seen thousands of emails coming through to me. Don't panic. Your existing clients, you don't have to send out to them today saying, please opt back into me, okay? Don't have to do it. Do the housekeeping, like I said, and clear through, okay? Get rid of everyone you don't need, you're never going to speak to again, or you haven't used for the last 2 years, or whatever it is. Now, whoever's left, as long as you have got those email addresses, or message addresses, or telephone numbers, in the usual course of your business previously, then you can keep those. Okay, there's no problem with them. You don't need to get their permission all over again. What you must do is anything in future that you send to them must have if you're going to do anything, the opt-in clause or the opt-out clause in that email or whatever. Okay, so you've got to make it easy for them, as you'll see me in a moment, to opt back out. But you haven't got to, so the next email you send, you haven't got to ask them to opt in, okay? If they're already an existing client. So don't panic over them. If you want to do it as part of the process to clear up, then you crack on. But some people have got huge databases. Some of my clients have got maybe 25,000 people on their database. They haven't got to scrabble through all of those people and try and get them to all reconfirm by the 25th of May. Okay, so clear out the ones you don't want. Continue to use the email addresses you've already got, but on the next email you send out to them, you must put an opt-out option. Okay? Okay, so we already said you've got to be clear about everything you're doing, and when they're opting in, what are they opting in for? You know, emails, newsletters, messaging. And I already said the opt-out clause must be easy. You can't say to them on an email, look, you can opt out by phoning me between 2 and 3 in the morning on a Thursday with a month with the letter A in it, okay? You can't make the opt-out process really challenging. You've got to be able to say, something simple like, click here to opt out. Got to make it easy. Now it's really important, this is why I'm saying about using some of this software. You know, when you get that person says opt out, it's really important that you then don't send them an email the next day or the next week. So the person in charge of this has got to manage all these emails coming back, all the opt-outs, they've got to be deleted or they've got to be filed depending on what your reason is for keeping them. So somebody is going to have to manage this, you know, all the time. Don't be afraid to use software to achieve it. Now, part 2. So part 2 is the right to request information, right request updates. So the public, you know, we are the public as well, you know, so we will be giving our details to banks and building societies or even our local schools for our children, whatever it is. We all have the right now to contact those people and ask them, what data do you hold on me? Okay, and they have to respond in a reasonable time, and that reasonable time is normally a month. There are some exceptions to that. Now, they can ask you for the information, you got to respond. And then they can ask you to make changes to their information. Maybe they've changed their wedding name, maybe they've changed the house address or whatever it is, you've got to update that. They might ask you to delete part of it. They'll say, you know, there's no reason for you to have my address on your record cards. I only come into you for a haircut. You have to delete it. Or they might ask you to cease altogether. I want all of my information deleted from your records. Now, in most cases, unless you've got a legal reason for holding onto that information, that's exactly what you must do. Now, there's going to be a whole list of reasons why you might not get rid of it. And you've got to do a policy on this. You've got to write somewhere on a document your retention periods for different things. So record cards, staff are all different retention periods. People with sensitive information like medical records, sometimes you've got to keep them up to 4 years. Staff records are normally about 6 years. Insurance is about 9 years. Overall staffing is about 6 years. But you're going to have to check all this out. And you'll see that I always, all you guys know, I always recommend the NHF, and I don't work with them either. You know, you've got to keep your legal mind up to date. So whatever the legal requirements are, you can keep that for that period. But if you haven't got a legal basis for keeping information, these guys want it gone, you've got to get rid of it. And they can respond, they can't respond, they can request this as much as they want. So I'm sure they've got better things in their lives to do, but if they want to send you a request every single month, I want to know, I want to know, I want to know, you've got to keep responding with an update on their status. And on top of all that, you can't charge them for it. It's got to be completely free. So, now, we already said it's got to be easy to opt in, and it's got to be even easier if you like to opt out. Okay, it's all got to be easy. It's got to be easy for everyone, except for us. Now, it's got to be easy for these people to make the request. like I said, like I joked about, you can't make it awkward and have it on, one day of the year that they can opt out. Well, it's the same with the information request. It's got to be really straightforward. So you've got to have a process in place. Maybe it's, a telephone system, maybe it's an email system that says, if you want to request your information, you've got to do these things. Now you'll see me against this same basis. I'm not affiliated. Okay, these I'll put a link right at the end of this page, and I'll put a copy actually of Salon Help of what I'm using. So mine's a GDPR request form, and someone can go to my website, they put their information in, and then it goes basically into a basket or a box, however you want to talk about it. The customer gets a copy, I get a copy, and it keeps track of all the data requests information that's coming through. And believe it or not, I've already had a request, just people testing out my software, no doubt. Now that goes onto your website, so if you haven't got a website, it might be a bit more difficult, but it's one page and it's added onto your website. There is a charge for it. I'll send you the link, you guys can pick that up. But for me, I can't see any other way of tracking it properly. You can't have some people phoning up and then, your receptionist or your Saturday girl or something, sticking it on a bit of paper. Well, first of all, you've got other people's data already, and then she leaves it in the book or it falls on the floor and you don't go back with a request. This information has got to be tracked. Here's my homepage for Salon Help Business Coaching. It's got all the usual stuff across the top, why you should use a business coach and prices and all that sort of thing. And then on the right hand side, I've added the GDPR request. So the client's got to click onto the GDPR request, and this page comes up for them. It says, exercise your rights under GDPR. Send your GDPR request to Salon Help via this form. So if anyone does phone me up or send me an email or send me a text message, what I do is I direct them back to this page and say, look, this is the channel that I'm using for GDPR requests. That way it's always going to go through one channel, and the staff are not going to get hold of it and it's not going to get lost, etc. They've got to fill out a few details. Of course, we need things like if they're a company or have we got their name and all that sort of stuff, and we want to know what the nature of their request is. And once we have that, that's all they've got to do is hit the submit button, and that will go off to, first of all, my inbox, but also there will be a PDF copy of it generated, and also the customer will know that they've made a GDPR request formally. I then obviously have to do my part, and I need to respond to that within the next month. So this is the page that I'm saying you guys should really be able to use, and it's the best system I've seen so far for collecting this information and responding, which is what we're going to talk about in the next part of the presentation. And here's the tracking part. So part 3 is about you've got to action the requests. Like I said earlier, usually within a month. Then you've got to keep a record of all this. Now imagine this is all on bits of paper and telephone calls coming through here and there. That's why I think the website page, anyone phones up, you just say, just go to our website page please. Anyone who sends you a message on text, please go to our website page. Anyone who sends you an email, please go to our website page. Okay, just channel them all through one thing, and then you can keep all one file on your system. You'll always know where they are. Because you've got to keep a record of it. So you've got to keep a record of all the requests. So you don't want some on your phone, some on a post-it note, some on the back of your diary, some on the back of your hand. Get the software, all right? All the requests will be in the same place. Then you've got to keep a record of all the changes. Maybe you've got a super sensitive customer who wants to update every 3 months. You've got to keep a record of all of them. In 3 or 4 years' time, you're going to have 20 requests from one person. Now, I don't want to join the scaremongering crowd for GDPR. I'm quite sure that in 6 months' time, this will all, simmer down, and we'll manage it just like we've always managed all the other legislation in our business. What I don't want us to do as an industry is to, have poor publicity, and I certainly don't want it for my clients, and I don't want it for, you guys. So hopefully I'm not coming across as scaremongering, but I'm just saying, look, these regulations are serious. They're going to be highly publicised. The public are going to be very, very knowledgeable about what's going on. And you don't want to fall outside of that, okay? So you're keeping all this information. And you're even got to make a record of who made the changes. So if you've got the person in charge of GDPR, then this page that's on your website can direct straight to them, and you know that they're managing it, and there'll always be a record of the person, the officer if you like, the GDPR officer will always be responsible for that information. And of course you've got to keep a record of the response back to the user. So okay, to the sender, the originator. So you've got to keep records and records and records and records and records. Now hopefully you won't get any requests, but the way the things are going with hacking and scams and all that sort of stuff, you're going to be having requests. And if you're a busy salon, I always put my bottom dollar that you're going to have requests quite soon. Don't be afraid to use software. I'm sending you a link for some stuff I'm using. If you can find something else, you guys crack on, but use it. Don't think you're going to put everything on a piece of paper and put it in the cupboard. Okay, let's have a recap on the last part of the presentation. So the data that you are using, you must make sure first of all that when you're sending material out to people, that it's clearly from your business, it's clearly from you, and it also includes information on your location and your contact details. We're going to want to do this anyway because we want people to know where we are so they can use our business. Make sure that you're only sending messages to people who have already opted in to receiving your marketing materials. A big no-no is going to be sending material to people who have opted out. So you need to make sure that you either got fantastic software which is monitoring this, or you've got a really good data controller who's making sure that the people who are opting out are taken away from your database. So the people who are opting in have got to be making a positive move to opt in, and that's for all aspects of your marketing, whether it's a special offer or a newsletter. You've got to make sure they're opting in for all the things you are targeting them with. So the consent must also be given to the right to opt out at any time. So make sure that's easy to perform. Just a click here to unsubscribe or a click here to opt out is the kind of facility you'll want on your website or on anything really. All the future marketing must also have the opt-out clause clearly visible. So they haven't got to search around your website to actually get away from your marketing materials. So you've got to be able to show consent when they have consented. So you've got to keep a record of all this. So again, you're going to need a good backup system. There are more laws, legislation and conditions for children under 16. And you're going to have to get separate consent from the parents or the person in charge of the person who's in your salon under 16. Okay, so if you want to use any of their data at all, then you're going to need to get separate consent. The key thing is you must have a lawful reason for using any personal data. We usually do. I don't think we have any instances where it's unlawful, but that's a key thing, that we're using a lawful reason. Now, part 2, as we cover quite a lot, is all about allowing your clients to request information, request changes, and if they want to cease, you holding any information at all, they can make that request. So customers have the right to request changes to their information, and essentially you are obliged to conform to those changes. Now, ex-staff will be able to do the same as well, and in some cases, ex-staff will have the right to not exist. Now, there's going to be lots of laws around that. There's a lot of legislation around employment law, but essentially, they'll have the same rights to their data protection as the public, as ex-clients or ex-suppliers. But now part 3, and you saw that I sent a link to the software on the page that's on my website, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Not only have they got to have the right to request easily, they have the right to have a response and you are obliged to action these requests. Now, normally you have to respond within a month. There are some exceptions that allow you to extend that up to 2 months. Either way, you've got to keep the client informed, and then ultimately you've got to actually, conform to their requests. Okay, now we're going to finish the last part of the video presentation, and then we're going to talk about the data breach. So look, you've got to have your policies in place. So you're going to have a good clear out, you're going to sit down and you're going to write all your policies out. Okay, it's going to take you a day, 2 days to get your head around GDPR, write them all up. Once they're done, they're done. You can and have to change them, maybe once a year, once every 2 years, but not a lot's going to change for the average salon. Then, once you've got your head around it, you got all your policies in place, you got your software in place, you got your software for your booking in place. You now got to train your staff. Your whole team have got to be trained. Okay, it's going to be a little bit different with the self-employed people, but I did a video on employment versus self-employment, and we didn't cover GDPR. Maybe we'll cover that as a separate thing in a separate video, perhaps. But everyone who works for you has to comply to GDPR in your salon, okay, or your barbershop or your spa. And you've got to train them. So if you don't know what you're training on, you can't train them. And what's their part in this? So of course, they're not going to be setting up your website, but if they're doing, colour consultations, their job is to make sure that that customer either double ticks if it's an online one, or signs to say, I'm happy for you to keep this information for these reasons. What do you do when someone phones through and says, give my number to the manager? What's their part in all of this? Okay, so you need to do a staff training document. GDPR, staff training document, this is what you've got to do. And get them to sign it. You've got to make sure that you're covering everything you can and making sure you're reassuring the public and ICO ultimately. Okay? Like I said, training document signed. Now ultimately, so this has all come about really because of the breaches that we've had with banks, government, charities, that sort of stuff. They're quite big organisations and they're losing their laptops on trains or losing, USB cards or something ridiculous. But, the NHS has got hacked. It's happening all the time. Now it hasn't happened to small salons yet, and I guess we're not as desirable at the moment. But all information is valuable to the crooks, if you like. Now you're going to, if you do, ever have a breach. That means if you lose some data, if you lose that laptop, or if you get hacked, stolen, broken in, or maybe you've just got bad practice. What you got to do? You got to do something about it. You can't just go, oh, I lost my laptop, better order a new one. Under the GDPR, you've got to do something about it. So that means make a record of what happened straight away. Kind of, do an investigation. This is what happened. Write it down. Anticipate and evaluate the effect. So I've lost this information of 500 of my customers. What effect could that have on them? If maybe the PC was just corrupt and you've lost it all, then there might be no effect on them at all. Okay, if it was a USB stick and it's gone off with one of your customers, then maybe their bank details are in jeopardy. So you've got to work out what's the risk. And then what do you do to prevent it happening again? So you've got to put something in place. But that's just the first part. And then you've got a possible report to the ICO within 72 hours. So if someone, you've got to work out, is the customer in real jeopardy here? Have they got something to lose here? Could they have their bank details stolen or their identity stolen or something like that? If in your evaluation it's a possibility, then you've got to contact the ICO within 72 hours. All right? And that also means that you have this report ready to tell them or discuss with them. Again, don't want to scaremonger. I know most of you guys have got small salons, you just want to get on with life. But this is GDPR and this is what they're expecting. The GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, are designed to do two things. First of all, ideally to prevent a data breach, a data loss. And secondly, where there is a data loss, that there is a system in place to manage the breach. So A data breach is a loss of data, or it could be of unauthorized alteration or the sharing of personal information, and this might be accidental or deliberate. So it could be things like employee theft, a system hack, or a loss of your hardware. The key things, as I said in the presentation, is that you must record what happens if you have a breach. You must work out what the effects are, and you may have to report it to the ICO within 72 hours. And of course, you've got to take actions to limit the effect or prevent its reoccurrence. So that's the end of the data breach. So in summary, GDPR should be in place by 25th of May 2018. After that day, technically you're legally liable. Okay, you've probably seen in the press the fines are absolutely huge. I don't think small salons are going to get fined early doors, early days. You're going to get wrapped across the knuckles if you got all your procedures in place. But I think you're going to see more and more of it, especially once they realise that it's going to be revenue generating as well. 25th of May, guys, push on, get it done. If you haven't done by then, keep on going. Put your systems and policies in place to manage your data. That's all you're doing. You've got to have a legal valid reason for holding on to any data. So, just look at your data. Have I got a good reason, a legal reason for holding on to this? If you haven't, then you shouldn't have it. Get rid. All data must be secure. Now, I haven't mentioned it much, but you don't have to be digital to go under the GDPR, okay, under the regulations. This applies to all paper as well. So if you want to stay on paper, if you want an appointment book, okay, on your desk that the public can still see, well, you're going to have to do something about that. Your paperwork's got to be locked up. It's got to be in a proper filing cabinet. It's got to be easy to find. So it's got to be in proper sections. So there's no reason for you to go away from paper in the first instance. If I was coaching you, I would be telling you to get everything digital, because paper has a way of moving off into the distance, being left on staff room tables and left on receptions, and appointment books getting picked up, etc. I would certainly be looking to move to digitalization as soon as you can, but it's not necessary for GDPR. They're not asking for it. Don't forget that users have a right to know what you hold on them and all the regulations that go with that, and you've got to action the changes, and I'm going to send you the link that I think could make your life pretty damn easy on that particular, well, it's actually part 2 and part 3, one little tiny bit of software. And then you've got to keep a copy of the breach as well, so you've got to keep copies of everything. Now, this is my personal suggestions. And I've put in brackets if you have a busy salon. If you're a one-man band, maybe the costs are too much, but also I don't want to overcomplicate this. But if you're kind of a busy shop and you're busy, or you're expanding, or you're growing, or you just want to kind of be right on order with what everything that's going on. This is what I think as a coach. This is what I've been telling most of my clients, is to do this. Go digital. Okay, in the long run, it's going to be easy for you to be able to find all the files, all the access. As a click of a button, it's going to be there. It's probably not as difficult as you think. You've probably got a laptop or an iPad or something, and as long as that's kept secure, you can use that. There's going to be regulations on how you transfer data, by the way. It's going to be encrypted and that sort of thing, but I don't want to get techie on you today. I think you should register with the ICO. Not many salons shouldn't. For many, it is actually voluntary. Like I said, do the online check, but if in doubt, join. It's £35 for most salons, and the information for the next year or two is going to be really useful for you. I still tell you, join the NHF, not just for GDPR. It's going to keep you up to date with everything that's going on in the industry. It's also going to give you a legal helpline that's going to really, help your business when anything you've got issues. I see on the forums all the time people being taken to court, or customers coming back with skin reactions, or people whose insurance companies are not very helpful. Join these guys. I don't know how people run businesses without this kind of support. I think you should get the GDPR tracker and the GDPR website request form. Particularly that second one it's the simplest bit of software you'll ever find. But that tracker, and I'll slot it into the presentation in the video. You'll probably see it quite soon. It'll take you through. I'll give you maybe a copy of mine or someone else's just to show you. Look, it's very simple and just keeps you up to date with everything. And like I said, look, it starts on May the 25th, 2018, and it doesn't stop that day. All right, so look, stay positive, guys. It's not a lot of fun. We're in a creative industry. We want to go off, we want to run our businesses, and we want to generate sales, and we want to generate client interest and all kind of, as I call it, the sexy stuff. But we've got a regulation, we've got to comply with it. So guys, get on with it. If you want my help online, I haven't got time to kind of coach each of you in GDPR. If you want to send me questions, go to Salon website or go to the Salon Help Facebook page. If you want to put questions in there, I'll do my best to answer them. I mean, last week I think I had something like about 120 questions, so I will get back to you as much as I can, and I've tried to answer as many questions as I can in this. Get the tracker and that'll take care of most of it. All right, look, stay in contact, send me questions, have a great weekend, hope you enjoy the video.